It's a pleasure to be here. So basically, MAPS is a non-profit pharmaceutical company that I've been running for the last 32 years with the focus of developing psychedelics and marijuana into FDA-approved and EMA-approved medicines. So I'm going to briefly give you 100 plus years of history in about 10 minutes. Okay, so I'll give you roughly 100 years of history in about 10 minutes. And then right now, the main point I'd like to leave you with is that in the United States, there are no regulatory obstacles to the development of psychedelics as prescription medicines. However, there's a lack of federal funding. We've had to find independent funding. There is a fundamental obstruction of research with the cannabis plant in the United States, in that there's a monopoly, a federal monopoly on the production of federally legal marijuana held by the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And that monopoly is used to hinder research into the beneficial effects and facilitate research into harmful effects of marijuana. But there's a fundamental problem, which is that the marijuana from the federal government is only for research. It's not possible for commercial sales. And from the FDA and the EMA, the only phase 3 studies that are permitted with the exact same drugs that need to be marketed. So as long as we have this federal monopoly on the supply of marijuana, we cannot do phase 3 studies in the United States with marijuana. So that's the primary thing, and we've been litigating that, and hopefully that will change in the next year or so or less. So MDMA was first invented by Merck in 1912. It was not something they were looking for. They were just trying to evade a competitor's patent, and they developed a new synthetic pathway and were patented everything along the way. Merck didn't invent so in the United States, then we were trying to get permission also for MDMA PTSD starting in 2000, and we had a problem. The FDA said yes, but institutional review boards refused to approve the study. We went through 7 institutional review boards, and they all said no, or they even refused to consider it. But then I scanned the list of private for-profit non-institutional review boards, and there was one that had the name Copernicus. And so out of desperation, I said, this is the last one. I'm going to contact Copernicus if any company is aware of the political and religious suppression of science. It should be Copernicus. And they ended up being true to their name, and they did finally approve the study. We've published then several papers in 2010, 2012. These are small phase 2 pilot studies. Lancet Psychiatry is about to publish a paper at the end of this month about another of our pilot studies with veterans, firefighters, and police officers with chronic and treatment-resistant PTSD. There's an expanding call for neuroscience research into how MDMA works and what we can learn about compassion and empathy towards this. This is from neuroscientists at Stanford. The world's populations need more compassion and empathy for one another. The study of MDMA provides one small but potentially important step towards reaching that goal. So after 30 years, the MAPS was started. We had enough evidence from our phase 2 studies to go to FDA, and we had our end of phase 2 meeting, and FDA said yes, we can move to phase 3. We gave them data on 107 patients, PTSD patients from United States, Israel, Switzerland, and Canada. And what we showed is that therapy with our inactive placebo or low-dose MDMA as a comparator, chronic treatment-resistant PTSD, 23% of them no longer had PTSD 2 months after the last experimental session. But then when you added MDMA, it more than doubled to 56% no longer have PTSD. But the question is also, is this a short-term psychedelic afterglow, or does it last? So we've done follow-ups 12 months or longer, and what we find is that now over 2/3 of the people no longer have PTSD. So people continue to get better after the treatment. And on the basis of this, we decided then to go into what's called a special protocol assessment process with the FDA. And what that means is you negotiate every aspect of the protocol design and all the other information that the regulatory agency will want in order to approve the drug. And if you are able to get an agreement letter, that means that the FDA is legally bound to approve the drug if that design gets statistically significant evidence of efficacy and if no new safety problems arise. And so on July 28th of last year, we did get this agreement letter. This is our design. It's 3 experimental sessions, either inactive placebo or varying doses of MDMA, supplemented by 12 90-minute non-drug psychotherapy sessions, 3 before the first MDMA session and 3 after each MDMA session. And then the primary outcome measure is 2 months afterwards. We applied for breakthrough therapy. This is called PRIME by the EMA. This is the most important program that the FDA has to facilitate the most promising drugs. I was a little bit worried if we would get this or not, because under President Trump and Attorney General Sessions and their efforts to try to escalate the drug war, this is very public. But the FDA granted us breakthrough therapy on August 15th. And what this means is the best evidence possible that the FDA is really committed to science over politics when it comes to research with Schedule I drugs. We had a meeting December 19th with the DEA, and now the DEA has even changed because we had helped some police officers with PTSD, but also because the FDA was strongly behind us, and so we met with the DEA to facilitate the process of obtaining Schedule I licenses. We met with the FDA on December 20th to finalize some details about Phase 3 on the first meeting under breakthrough therapy. And we've been meeting now with the European Medicines Agency, and we will have further meetings in June with them, and we feel by the end of this summer we'll probably have an agreement with EMA to move forward. And so that's where we're at now. And I think what I want to just leave you with is this idea that while we have been able to make incredible progress, it's only because we have been able to get funding from those people that have used psychedelics mostly and found them of value, and also from the cryptocurrency community. So we have now raised $26 million for Phase 3 in the United States, and we're about to start that. We anticipate that we're going to need another $5 million or so from for EMA research, but we won't know that. And we will end up, I believe, showing that MDMA, that marijuana, that psilocybin will reduce massive amounts of suffering. And I'd just like to leave you with that question of what amount of suffering could have been prevented over the last 50 years if funding had been available and rational risk-benefit analysis had been provided. So it's not really a regulatory issue so much as biased interpretation of the scientific data. Thank you.